Canada just committed billions to the F-35 Lightning II. It is the most advanced stealth fighter in history. But military analysts are whispering a terrifying question. Did the Royal Canadian Air Force just buy a Ferrari to drive on an ice road? While the headlines celebrate fifth-generation stealth, there was another option. A fighter born in the blizzard. A jet designed to treat a frozen, desolate highway as a military fortress. A machine that doesn't hide from radar, but actively hunts it. Today, on Air Dom, we are unlocking the alternate timeline. We are simulating the war where Canada chose the Saab Gripen E, and proving why the cheap option might have been the deadliest mistake the enemy never saw coming. The contracts are signed, and the F-35 won. But today, we run a strategic simulation to test the contender that was left out in the cold. We are dissecting the alternate timeline where Canada chose the Saab Gripen E, and why that decision would have created a formidable defensive wall across the Arctic that no adversary would dare to breach. This is the strategic argument for the road not taken. To understand why the Gripen E represents a missed tactical masterstroke, you have to understand the battlefield. We are talking about the Canadian Arctic. This is not the sterile desert of Nevada or the well-supplied airbases of Western Europe. This is millions of square kilometers of ice, hostile winds, and absolute isolation. In this theater, a fighter jet is not just a weapons platform, it is a lifeline. The strategic argument for the Gripen begins on the ground, specifically on the lack of it. The prevailing doctrine of modern air warfare relies on massive, static airbases. These are localized cities with pristine runways, heated hangars, and hundreds of support personnel. In a peer-state conflict, these bases are the first targets. A barrage of cruise missiles takes out the runway, and the most advanced stealth fleet in the world becomes nothing more than a collection of very expensive paperweights. The Gripen E was designed with a completely different philosophy, one that aligns perfectly with Canadian geography. It is built for dispersed operations. Picture this scenario. Tensions spike in the polar region. Satellites detect incoming bombers. Instead of scrambling from a known base like Cold Lake or Bagotville, which are already targeted by enemy guidance systems, a squadron of Canadian Gripens has already vanished. They have deployed to a remote stretch of the Trans-Canada Highway or a small municipal airstrip in the Yukon. A small team of conscripts, led by a single technician, rearms and refuels the jet in less than 10 minutes with the engine still running. This is the pit stop concept. While the enemy satellites are scanning for heat signatures at major bases, the Gripen is launching from a snow-covered road, invisible and lethal. This capability turns the entire Canadian landmass into an aircraft carrier. It denies the enemy a center of gravity to attack. Now, let us push the throttle forward and talk about the kinetic engagement. The mainstream narrative obsesses over stealth, the physical shaping of metal to deflect radar. But stealth is passive. It is a hiding game. The Gripen E does not hide, it lies. Enter the Arexis Electronic Warfare Suite. This is not just a jammer, it is a digital weapon. When an enemy radar locks onto the Gripen, Arexis does not just block the signal, it captures it, mutates it, and fires it back. Imagine a Russian S-400 operator staring at his scope. Suddenly, he does not see one Canadian jet. He sees 50. He sees ghost formations attacking from angles that do not exist. The Gripen creates a hall of mirrors in the sky. While the F-35 prays its geometry holds up against low-frequency radar, the Gripen pilot is actively hacking the enemy's eyes, turning their own sensors into a kaleidoscope of confusion before launching a Meteor missile into the chaos. The integration of the Meteor missile is critical here. This weapon is a ramjet-powered Apex Predator. Unlike standard solid-fuel missiles that burn out and coast to their target, the Meteor can throttle its engine, saving energy for the terminal phase. It effectively has the largest no-escape zone of any air-to-air missile in existence. A Canadian Gripen, operating from a highway in the Northwest Territories, could engage a threat entering sovereign airspace hundreds of kilometers away with a kill probability that defies conventional logic. But the Gripen's advantage is not just about surviving a missile lock. It is about a threat that is far more dangerous than an enemy fighter, the danger of running out of money. Military strategy is not just about ballistics and radar cross-sections, it is about economics. War is a game of resources. The purchase price of a fighter jet is just the tip of the iceberg, the hull beneath the water is the operating cost. This is where the strategic argument for the Gripen becomes undeniable. Estimates suggest the cost per flight hour of the Gripen E is a fraction of its fifth-generation competitors. We are talking about $4,000 to $7,000 per hour versus $30,000 or more. Why does this matter strategically? Because pilot proficiency is the single most important variable in air combat. If it costs a fortune to fly the jet, pilots spend more time in simulators and less time pulling GS. With the Gripen, the Royal Canadian Air Force could afford to have its pilots in the air constantly. They would be masters of their domain, not just simulator operators. Furthermore, the savings would have allowed the defense budget to pivot. That liberated capital could have funded a fleet of loyal wingman drones, advanced early warning radar systems for the Arctic coast, or new naval assets. By choosing the cheaper-to-operate platform, Canada would have actually increased its total military lethality. Now we must address the elephant in the room, sovereignty. This is the political payload of the discussion. The F-35 is a marvel of engineering, but it is a locked vault. The source code is fiercely protected by the manufacturer and the government of the United States. To maintain, upgrade, or modify the software, you need permission. You are essentially leasing the capability. If geopolitical winds shift, or if priorities in Washington diverge from those in Ottawa, Canada could find itself with a fleet it cannot fully control. Saab offered something unprecedented, the keys to the kingdom. They proposed a full technology transfer. This would have meant that Canadian engineers, not foreign contractors, would have had full access to the aircraft's source code. Canada could have integrated its own weapons, updated its own mission data files, and tweaked the electronic warfare libraries overnight without asking for permission. This deal included building the jets in Canada, creating a domestic aerospace ecosystem that would have lasted for decades. From a strategic resilience standpoint, the ability to repair and modify your own weapons of war within your own borders is the ultimate definition of national security. It transforms a client state into a partner state. Critics often point to interoperability. They argue that to fight alongside the United States and NATO, Canada must fly the same airframe. This is a persuasive, yet flawed, argument. Interoperability is about data, not fuselage shapes. It is about Link 16 data links and secure communications. The Gripen E is NATO native. It speaks the same digital language. In fact, during red flag exercises, Swedish Gripens have famously integrated seamlessly with Allied forces, often playing the role of the aggressor and winning. A mixed fleet in NORAD would have actually provided a tactical advantage. If a new radar frequency is developed that can spot an F-35, having a Gripen in the formation with a completely different electronic signature and jamming capability complicates the enemy's targeting solution. Diversity in a defensive coalition is strength, not weakness. Let us simulate the geopolitical ripple effect of this alternative choice. Had Canada selected the Gripen, it would have sent a shockwave through the global defense industry. It would have signaled that middle powers are no longer content to simply purchase off-the-shelf solutions from superpowers, but are demanding industrial participation and sovereign control. It would have positioned Canada as a leader in Arctic warfare technology, potentially opening export markets to other nations facing similar cold weather challenges. The cockpit of the Gripen E is designed for the information age. It features a wide-area display, a single massive touchscreen that the pilot can customize. This is crucial for the modern battle space where information overload is the enemy.
Threat
the jet's
identified.
artificial intelligence acts as a co-pilot, filtering data, prioritizing threats, and presenting the pilot with actionable intelligence rather than raw noise. In the chaotic, high-stress environment of an Arctic interception, where seconds determine survival, this human-machine interface offers a cognitive dominance that cannot be overstated. Furthermore, the engine choice validates the fiction of this perfect marriage. The Gripen E is powered by the General Electric F414, the same engine found in the U.S. Navy's Super Hornet. This provides a logistical bridge. Canada could have leveraged the existing supply chains and technical knowledge base in North America for the engine, while enjoying the independent airframe of the Swedes. It was the perfect hybrid solution, American muscle wrapped in Swedish smarts and Canadian sovereignty. We must also consider the future-proofing aspect. The Gripen E is designed with a separated architecture. The flight critical systems, the software that keeps the plane in the air, are physically separated from the tactical systems, the software that fires missiles and runs the radar. This means the tactical software can be updated as easily as an app on your smartphone, without requiring a complete recertification of the aircraft's flight safety. In an era where software evolves faster than hardware, this agility allows the Gripen to adapt to new threats in weeks, not years. While other air forces are waiting for a midlife update block cycle, the Gripen fleet is already patched and ready for the new reality. The narrative that the F-35 was the only choice is a narrative of convenience, not strategic necessity. The choice of the Gripen E would have been a declaration that Canada values resilience over prestige, and practical lethality over paper statistics. It would have created a dispersed, stinging, insurmountable hornet's nest in the north, capable of operating from the most rugged conditions on Earth, maintained by Canadians, and controlled solely by the Canadian command. The ink is dry on the contract, but the strategic debate burns on. While the decision is final, the lesson remains critical. In the unforgiving theater of military aviation, most expensive does not always mean most effective. The Gripen E stands as the ultimate phantom, a vision of what could have been the most efficient guardian of the Arctic skies. It champions a philosophy of independence and dispersed operations, a doctrine often overshadowed by the allure of raw spending power. As the Royal Canadian Air Force steps into the future, the real test begins. Can the heavy logistical demands of a stealth fleet survive the brutal isolation of the high north? One thing is certain, the Gripen E remains the undisputed king of the road not taken, proving that air superiority isn't solely the domain of superpowers. This isn't just about metal and code, it is a clash of defense philosophies. Did we sacrifice sovereignty on the altar of interoperability? Did we trade essential agility for theoretical stealth? History is being written, but strategic simulations suggest the Swedish approach held the key to unlocking the true potential of northern defense. Where do you stand on this strategic divergence? Does the F-35 stealth advantage outweigh the economic sovereignty and dispersed capability of the Gripen? Or did Canada walk past the perfect tool for its unique geography? I want to see your analysis in the comments. Challenge the premise, engage respectfully, and let's drive this debate forward. If you value these deep dives, make sure to like, subscribe to Air Dom, and turn on notifications. We are preparing a new briefing on the complex dynamics of modern aerial defense. You won't want to miss it. Stay sharp.